So what is the global media saying about those two stories and others? Well, the New York Times is looking at the US House of Representatives, who passed that resolution to submit articles of impeachment to the Senate for trial. So what will happen next? The New York Times weighs that up. The Independent is calling it Putin's greatest power play yet, after the Russian president proposed the sweeping changes to the constitution, which may well be designed to enable him to stay in power in a different role after the end of his presidency in 2024. Singapore's Straits Times leads with US and China signing the first phase of that long-awaited trade deal. The US is expected to keep tariffs on about $370 billion worth of Chinese goods until the deal's next phase. The Times says television viewers in the UK will now be able to watch some of the country's most serious offenders being sentenced after the government moved to ditch the ban on cameras in Crown courts. And finally, Pet Sounds is no longer just the title of a famous Beach Boys album, but the latest offering from online music streaming giant Spotify, who are generating playlists for cats and dogs. The new service is intended to soothe and calm lonely animals at home, whilst also helping to alleviate stress. That's on the Verge News site. I have both a cat and a dog. I will look into that in more detail. Cornelia is back, as promised, to talk through these stories. So let's start with the New York Times and their analysis of this historic moment.
Well, it is historic.
US
the third
president.
time only. And, you know, the analysis, it's obviously split right down the middle along party lines. The Democrats say, you know, he has exerted undue influence over Ukraine in order to get information about Biden and his son Hunter Biden, and whether they are corrupt or not. And obviously the Democrats feel strongly, have gone and have Congress, the lower house is run by it has a majority of Democrats, so it's going to go ahead. They've marched the articles of impeachment across. And it's now in the Senate.
It took some time. There was a lot of pomp and ceremony. But what the question now is how damaging is this to the president? And that's what the New York Times is really focusing on, isn't it? It says the process could damage the president, but actually he's likely to be acquitted because the Senate is Republican-controlled.
Yeah. And the Republicans have come out. I mean, if you listened yesterday to some of the Republican senators, they've come out really on side of the president. And yes, it would be damaging, but it would be damaging probably with the people that wouldn't vote for him. You know, that the country is so divided, and his base will probably take. He's not going to be impeached in the end. Will take that as exoneration, as will he.
Indeed, and they're saying that that's the way they will turn this around in the run-up to an election at the end of the year. He'll say it's a witch hunt, and this is a demonstration of the Democrats wasting public money and time.
Yeah, and
do you remember that line, "Drain the swamp," which was what he was reiterating ahead of the election?
And I also remember that Nancy Pelosi, the leader of the House, was actually not too gung-ho initially to go for impeachment precisely for that reason.
So there's all to play for, but it starts next week. The Independent has a photograph of the Russian president, Vladimir Putin. Putin's greatest power play yet. It's quite extraordinary, isn't it? The detail in this article, do tell.
He's giving more power. He sacked his cabinet, or they have been told to resign. He is going to give more power to Parliament to appoint the Prime Minister. Right now, it is the President who appoints the Prime Minister. He's going to give the State Council, of which he is the head, more power. And that's actually not necessarily a bad thing, because the State Council also has the regional governments in there. So he's taking power away from the president and shifting it over to other entities, which will enable him, once he's stepped down,
which he will oversee and be in charge of,
and which will enable him, once he has stepped down,
so although he won't be president,
he won't be president. He will be
running Russia,
the power behind the throne. But you know, I was actually not. I was surprised at how it unfolded. But I have, ever since he's been elected for this time, second term, I said to myself, okay, what will he do? Because he is not the sort of person who will step down.
Or take a back seat.
Yeah.
Let's have a look then at Singapore Straits Times and its take on the signing of phase 1 in the trade deal. You and I have already discussed this. For, you know, countries and economies that surround China, depending on which ones, they've had very different effects. It's had very different effects, hasn't it?
Yeah, no, for some of them, you know, it has had huge effects, like for who trade a lot with China. It's had huge effects for Japan, for some countries. For other countries, it has had positive effects because some of the manufacturing base has been shifted. We could argue that would have happened anyhow as Chinese wages increased. Some of the supply chains would go for lower wage countries, but it has shifted. But as we discussed earlier, and this article actually makes the point too. Yes, it's the first step in a process, or in a two-pronged process, but it does not address some of the structural issues, like it does not address for instance, the state subsidies to certain countries, and you know the technology play that comes with it, which is, for instance, the Huawei debate.
Yeah, absolutely, and that debate will continue for some time.
Yeah, and it's not the end of the trade war.
No,
as your correspondent says, as we all know.
As we all know. Now let's have a look at the Times. Judges take star roles, it says, as TV cameras will be moving into criminal courts. At the moment in the UK, we don't have cameras in our courtrooms.
No,
we all remember,
probably
those of us who were around at the time will remember very well the trial of O.J. Simpson in the United States, and what a huge television event that became. And actually, since then, there's been a lot of debate in many countries in the world, but certainly in the UK, about whether cameras should be allowed in courtrooms or not.
Yeah, and I think we have Lord Barnett, who is the Lord Chief Justice, who says this will be a good thing to help explain the judiciary, the judicial system. I'm not sure this is the right way to go, because I remember the O.J. Simpson trial as well. And that was just a huge circus. And do we really want such a huge circus? On top of that, these people, until you're convicted, you're innocent until proven guilty. So what will that do to the reputation of people?
Well, it still sounds like there will be very strict rules about what isn't on screen if cameras do go into criminal courts, which they will be doing. So it will just be a single shot on the judge. Mainly, you're not going to have multiple cameras in the courtroom where you see defence, prosecution, the one standing trial, etc., etc.
However, it will be turned into a circus, because we'll now have there will be now a new category of journalist, the court reporter. You know, we
already have that. To be fair, Cornelia,
yeah, we have them, but I think it will take a new dimension. It will take a totally new dimension. It will sensationalize some trials, I'm sure.
We shall see.
We shall see.
The jury is out on that. Let's have a look then at The Verge. Spotify will now make a playlist for your cat or your dog, your bird, your iguana, whatever it may be, at home alone. At home alone, Cornelia.
Oh,
they need their own little playlist. What do you think?
Well, you know, that is typically a first world problem. If you go if you go to developing countries, maybe you have the problem of feeding your population, putting in infrastructure and so on.
Do you have pets?
I don't. I have three. I would like to have 3 Dobermans, and my 3 imaginary Dobermans.
Scary Dobermans.
Yes, to protect
surrounding you.
To protect me.
I have a cat and a dog, as I say, and I have to say, I've never put music on or the television on for my pets when I'm out, but I know people who do. Quite a few pets, as far as I know,
but you have your
listen
kids
to Radio
at home,
4
but you have
because they like conversation, maybe. But there's going to be podcasts as well. Pet podcasts.
Well, you know, it's a new business.
It's a whole new world. Actually, statistically, in the first world, as you say, it's a first world problem, we spend a lot more on our pets than on many other things. In fact, some pet owners are happy to go without themselves, but not the pet. The pet must not go without. I want to ask your opinion on our top business, well, one of our top business stories today, this news about smartphone use in 2019, all this data that's come through. How much time do you spend on yours, do you think, on a daily basis?
I'm spending too much time on it because with what you do, what I do, we need to be continuously connected. But I have started to have, over Christmas, I had a week off. The phone was...
You detoxed?
I detoxed.
Did you suffer separation anxiety?
Absolutely not. I was busy cooking for a load of people.
There you go. Sounds great. Thank you so much for being with us for the briefing today. I just want to mention